Geeks and geekettes, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, comic book fans all around the world, gats and gittens, welcome to another thrill-packed, information-loaded, possibly diverting episode of Ask Chuck Dixon, where you get to ask me, Chuck Dixon, coincidentally enough, questions about what I do for a living. What I do for a living is I write comic books. Let's not waste another second of your precious time. Ryan Williams, he wants to know, people say that the Batman is the most comic accurate version we've seen in the movies. This is one of the worst takes out there. We're told Batman is some depressed, brooding, emo kid who's a loner, and anyone who's read comics knows he's nothing like this in the comics. Well, the same people telling us that this is the most comic book accurate Batman are the same people who are telling us that Tom Hanks' performances, Walt Disney was amazingly convincing. Or Tom Hanks' performance as Mr. Rogers was amazingly convincing. He's such a great actor. Yeah, it's not. I haven't even seen this movie and I know it's not. You know, broody Robert Pattinson just sort of moping around. My biggest objection is, even though I haven't seen the movie, I know very well because of my interest in the Riddler is portrayed as a serial killer. And it's like, no. And there's not a whole lot of attention paid to actual riddles. He's just a guy who goes around killing people and, thinks he's doing it in a fancy way when he isn't. And, I had no interest in seeing this. I'm going to blame everybody but Robert Pattinson. Robert Pattinson's a very good actor who, unfortunately, is locked into these roles where he's just a mope all the time. He's just a po-faced loser wandering around. And I think primarily this is because his breakout role was in a movie called The Rover, an excellent Australian post-apocalyptic sort of art film thriller starring Guy Pearce. It's really worth your time if you've never seen it. And Pattinson plays like a mentally challenged wastrel in it. But the role is nuanced. His role is heartbreaking. He's a very good actor, but he's not called upon to act very much anymore. He's like called upon to be this one-note character, and I'm not going to blame him because I've seen The Rover, and his performance is amazing. So yeah, it's not the most comic book accurate. Hey, you get a twin spin. What do you know? First one of the day. Okay, Ryan Williams is back with, what Batman movie do you think is the best and which is the most comic accurate version? There really haven't been any. Early Marvel was much luckier. Marvel fans were much luckier at the beginning of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where they got maybe a half dozen comic book accurate movies. Reasonably comic book accurate movies, or at least movies that when you watched them reminded you of the comic book. Very rarely reminded of the Batman comic books when watching any Batman movie. The only time I can recall where it felt like a Batman comic was were the Batman Catwoman scenes in Dark Knight Rises. Other than that, it's like auteur directors went off in their own direction, not paying a whole lot of attention to the source material, except when it was convenient. The most comic book accurate portrayal of Batman is the various animated series, because they were created by people who loved the franchise and understood the depth of the universe, understand the nuances behind the characters. And, it's like anything else. I say this over and over again. Movies used to be made by people who love movies. TV used to be made by people who love TV. Comics used to be made by people who love comics. And that just isn't the case anymore. But these guys, Dini and Bruce Timm and all the other guys working with them, they love the comics and they loved Batman, And it shows in the finished product. I'm hopeful the upcoming Nightfall trilogy of movies might be the most comic book accurate, because obviously they're drawing on Kelly Jones's imagery here. A lot of what I've seen in the trailer I recognize as things I've written. And I certainly recognize, things that Alan and Doug contributed to the Nightfall saga. So let's hope with, what will probably be nearly a 5-hour running time that they get it right this time. That they get it right. At least it looks good. And so we'll see, if they can resist adding anything or leaving out things that are very, very important to the story. So anyway, yeah, not a big Batman movie fan. Not any kind of Batman movie fan. Triple spin. Ryan is back with: the common take on Batman today is that Bruce Wayne is actually the mask and Batman is actually who Bruce Wayne really is. I personally find this take to be very wrong, as we've seen in plenty of stories that Batman is just Bruce Wayne playing a character in order to put fear into criminals. We see behind the scenes who Bruce Wayne really is, and it's a very compassionate person who is outgoing. Now, I see him put on an act in public as Bruce Wayne to pretend like he's some rich, careless, reckless person, but that's only him acting that way for the public, so they don't catch on to him being Batman. What do you think about the whole Bruce Wayne is a mask theory? Well, I think that Batman is really Bruce, and Bruce really is Batman. We all change personas. This isn't something unique to comic book characters. If you went to public school and you're in junior high or high school, and all of a sudden you're having to change classes, so 6 or 7 times a day you move yourself from one room to another, and you're going from one room of people that you associate with for 45 minutes to another room full of often entirely different people. Now, I think all of us did this in school. You sort of match your persona to the room. Okay. And I know I did this. So if there was a tone to the room, generally set by the teacher, sometimes set by the students, you sort of adjusted yourself. So I had classes in which I was the class clown. I had classes in which I was the serious student. I had classes in which I sat in the back row and hoped I never got called on. I didn't want to talk to anybody. So you could say I had a different persona, but all of them were me. But I had a different persona. And forget gym class. So he's a big, clumsy, non-athletic doofus that I was. It was like, oh, God, please don't call on me. Don't ask me to do anything in front of the class. So I'm like, I can't climb that rope. Nobody can climb that rope. It's not possible. So anyway, people go, some people take the thing, well, he's schizophrenic. No, he doesn't have to be schizophrenic. I agree with you. Bruce Wayne and Batman, they are fruits of the same tree. He is the same person. And yes, he takes on a Batman persona, but he's certainly obviously very serious about it. And the Batman portion of his life is obviously the main portion of his life. It's the one he's most serious about. But he also understands, because he's a very smart guy, is he's got to keep the Bruce Wayne side going too. Not only for the public perception, because screw the public perception. He could just be a reclusive millionaire or billionaire and nobody ever sees him. But he's got to keep Bruce Wayne Enterprises and Wayne Tech and all this. He's got to keep them running, because he needs that money to be Batman. And he's also got to oversee everything to make sure that none of the money he funnels away to finance these Batman projects ever gets uncovered. That it's always, I always wanted to write a story where he gets audited, this is, he has to be active in both worlds. And I just love writing Bruce Wayne scenes with him, with the board. with Lucius Fox and the board or stockholders of his various companies, and where Bruce would make what seemed like an idle suggestion. Like, well, I really don't know what I'm talking about, but what if? And of course, it's actually Bruce Wayne interceding with his keen understanding of finances and understanding of corporate politics or economics or whatever. But he always couches it in, it seems like, how'd this guy come up with this? It says, as an outsider, that kind of thing. And of course, it would be the thing that, save the company or help them, make more millions or make something more efficient or whatever. But he just, but they could pass it off as, even a stop clock is right twice a day. Every once in a while, Bruce comes up with something that works, but, it's just random chance. So yeah, I mean, they're both the same guy. It's the same guy. There's not any difference. Of course, he puts on a mask. He's literally putting on a mask, so he's becoming a different person. But in reality, he's not, because as you said, he's compassionate. If he wasn't compassionate, he'd go live on an island somewhere with all of his money. But he feels the need to stay and try to save Gotham, which I think is his goal beyond his vow to his parents, because that would have worn off a long time ago. His new job is he sees injustice and he's going to right it. Eric McCrae wants to know, you and many of us aware comic book fans know and love Jack the King Kirby and Steve Ditko. Yet most casual comic fans or normies only know Stan Lee, who most think Stan alone created the whole Marvel Universe. How do we help educate others about the contributions of Kirby and Ditko? Yeah, Stan was the man. Literally, he was the man. He was out there in front. He was the ambassador to comics. He was going on the talk shows, getting humiliated at every turn. He was doing everything. He did some stuff, to try to help promote comics that simply crashed and burned and were embarrassing, and the rest of us would have gone and hit our faces for the rest of our lives. But not Stan. Stan wouldn't give up, and he kept out there pushing and promoting and everything else. And he must have loved comics to do it, because he certainly could have moved into some other kind of magazine. His cousin, was it, that owned the magazine companies that were the umbrella over Marvel? They certainly could have gotten Stan a job writing copy, for one of his many, sweat magazines or girly magazines. But no, Stan wanted to keep those comics alive, and he fought hard to do it. You can't take that away from him. Because of that, he becomes the public face of Marvel. You can't help it. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. At the beginning and through the years, he tried to talk about Jack Kirby. He tried to talk about Steve Ditko. Here's the bottom line. No one cared. No one cared how comic books were made. If Stan said, I wrote, drew, lettered them, and stapled them together and dropped them off at the newsstand, they would believe him, because they didn't care to believe otherwise. They weren't curious about how comic books were made, which is a shame. But more and more people are hearing about Jack Kirby. And the story is getting out to people who care, and that's the difference. You can't teach something to someone who doesn't care to hear it. Who doesn't care how comic books are made and that they involve more than one person. And, same for Steve Ditko. His story is getting out there. I mean, many, many more people know who Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby are now, even people that aren't in comics, because you have cognoscenti and, the film geeks and stuff like that. And they want to show off. They want to, these characters are actually created by the artists who first drew them, so they're going to lecture you on that. So there are people that people that want to know things. And then there's people that don't. There's a great scene in the show Malcolm in the Middle in which some scientific fact is presented to the boys. And Reese, the older bully brother, says, who would want to know that? And Malcolm, very, very excited, said, who wouldn't want to know that? And those are really the two kinds of people there are in the world. People that want to know that Jack Kirby created Fantastic Four, Steve Ditko created Spider-Man, and people who really don't give a crap, one way or the other. And that's it. I'm reminded with your question, I'm reminded of the recent interest, over the past 20 years in Nikola Tesla. And all of a sudden, it's like Nikola Tesla, the forgotten genius, okay? And we hear about Nikola Tesla, and people are still like, he's a forgotten genius. He never got the credit he deserved. Well, now he has. Now he has. Anybody who wanted to know, who was curious, me among them, about who Nikola Tesla was, his contribution to our electrical grid system, or his contribution to technology, and all of his crazy ideas for generating electricity, and his importance to the electrification of the United States and the world. Any of us who wanted to know about Nikola Tesla, we know about it now. And the people that don't want to know about it, the people that you see on TV and they stop them on the street and they ask them who won World War II and they don't know, those people don't care. They don't care they think Nikola Tesla invented the car. And it's like, so what are you going to do? And I think the world's getting dumber every day anyway. So you're fighting an uphill battle. But just be happy that, more people know about Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko now than knew about Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko 30 years ago. When they were completely obscurities. But let's not blame Stan. Well, I know you're not blaming Stan, but let's not blame Stan for being famous. Because he did, he was famous for promoting comics and was hugely successful at doing that, at keeping comic books in, the public zeitgeist. So that the movies and all the rest of it could happen. And unfortunate what's happening with Marvel today, that's not his fault either. So anyway, there you go. You either know or you don't care. Twin spin. There we go. Eric McRae is back with, we often hear about Jack the King Kirby and his family's going clashes with Marvel over art, copyrights, and notoriety, yet I seldom hear of much conflict with DC. Kirby created some phenomenal IP for DC, such as the New Gods, Darkseid, to Commandi. This is a real deal behind the scenes. Well, I can take you, I can take you deep into the House of Secrets. This one I know the answer to. This secret I know. Okay. So, Kirby's family, Kirby's family eventually, they sued Marvel and settled for, an undisclosed amount of money, which means it was big. But when Jack was still alive, they sued for the return of his original artwork. Because lots and lots of his artwork, obviously thousands of pages he created, never been returned to him. And this was a bugaboo at Marvel. This was a bit of a controversy. This caused fear and loathing in the offices at Marvel, because I was working for them when this was going on. When there was a big thing, it was like, I back Jack, give Jack back his artwork. And there was a lot of upsetment at Marvel in the offices, and for very good reason. Marvel's policy toward royalties, as well as the return of original art, is these are incentives. Unlike DC, where in the 70s they made a contractual agreement that the artwork belonged to the artists and would be split up accordingly. Marvel, it was an incentive, which means it's a gift, which means it's up to them whether or not they want to return it. This is what Kirby's family was challenging. Now, for the most part, Marvel was returning art. No big deal. They eventually established an art return department. Did nothing but return art. But we're talking about days where original art, just hundreds and hundreds of pages, were sitting in flat files in every editor's office. And where did they go? Well, they went, well, famously, a lot of them, the Golden Age, went to this warehouse. They uncovered tens of thousands of pages of comics, like 20 years ago in a warehouse, forgotten warehouse. But in the 80s and the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, the stuff was just thrown in a back room. And sometimes in no particular order, and the rest of it. And not particularly well secured. And this is true at DC as well. The artwork was not particularly well secured. They would throw original artwork on the floor to mop up spills. I mean, just no real regard for it until fans started showing up and getting jobs. Comic book fans were showing up and getting jobs at DC and Marvel and helping themselves to artwork. Lots of artwork got stolen. Thousands of pages of Kirby got stolen over the years. And this is what the Kirby family was trying to prevent at the time. This is why they were in a fight. They wanted to preserve that art, for the family. And so this created a problem at Marvel because you still had editors working at Marvel at the time who were guilty of this. And it wasn't only editors. There were artists. There was a rather famous artist who was caught stealing artwork. I don't know if I related that in the video earlier or not, but I'm not going to retell it here. But a rather famous, well-known, I mean, if you're a comic fan, you know the guy's name, was caught stealing artwork and had been doing it for years and reselling it. And I was at a convention once in the 70s, and I saw a guy put in handcuffs. The cops came in and busted him. He had tables full of Paul Galassi artwork, Kirby, DC stuff. So there was always stolen artwork available on the black market. And that's wrong because contractually, ethically, that artwork should go back to the artist because it's kind of part of their income. Comic book artists aren't paid all that much. They're really not. They never have been. Still to this day, they're not paid the true value of their labors. And so what's wrong with them making money on the side selling their own work to collectors and the rest, and sometimes making quite a good living doing it. But your question was, why'd they sue Marvel? Why'd they go after Marvel legally? But we never hear anything about Kirby at DC. And it's because DC took care of Kirby. They worked to get him a contract with a proposed amusement park that was going to be based on a lot of Kirby imagery. And so Kirby did all kinds of production art and all kinds of crazy stuff for this proposed amusement park. And he created all these new characters and everything else. And he wasn't paid comic book rates. He was paid like major commercial art, big time rates. The figure I heard is that they paid Kirby $1 million for his work in creating this material. And this would have been in the late 70s when $1 million was still $1 million. It was still a lot of money. And so DC, they returned his artwork, the stuff that hadn't been stolen. They returned all of his artwork. So that's why. That's why he and his family had no animus toward DC, because Jeanette Kahn and Paul Levitz made sure that they took care of him. Now you could say, well, why didn't they just give him money? What's a funny thing about the entertainment business? I'm going to include comics in the entertainment business because they're solidly part of the entertainment business now. They'll give you money, but you got to do something for it. It's like they got to justify, they're money laundering. So they got to justify it on their books why they gave you that money. So you can even have a legal settlement where they got to give you money. And they'll say, well, we'll give it to you. You're trying to, come to a settlement. Well, okay, we agree to the figure you're talking about. But what if you did this in exchange for it? And of course, what you're doing in exchange for it isn't worth anywhere near the money they're going to pay you. But on the books, it's going to look that way. If you follow what I mean. And this is what they did for Jack. They gave him a job that was way overpaid for the work he put in. He put in a lot of work, and he was diligent about it. Some of the work's beautiful. I saw some of it when I was at DC offices. I mean, full color renderings, colored by him, of amusement park rides and the gateway to the park, and what the concession stands would look like. It's all Kirbyized. Pretty amazing. But he was paid way more than he would have been paid in a normal venture. And that was because they wanted to take care of him. Because Jeanette Kahn and later Paul, they did care about the freelancers, and they did care about comics, unlike the crowd running the business today. Triple spin. Eric McRae is back with, in the early 70s and early 80s, in the 70s and early 80s, John Byrne and George Perez had a huge rivalry. Have you ever personally conversed with either man? Which is your favorite artist? Which do you think is a better artist? I've been in the same room with them on numerous occasions, both of them. I can't say I ever had a conversation. They've talked to me and I've listened. And I very much got the impression I was not invited to actually respond in kind. I don't know if John Byrne feels awkward if you can't do small talk. He'll start doing like jokes or telling an anecdote or whatever in place of conversation. And I always got the impression with a lot of these guys, John Byrne is not the only person like this in comics. I always got the impression he had no idea who I was. It's just, this is what he did when he met someone and he couldn't get away from talking to them. Now, some creators, they just won't talk to you at all. They'll act like you're not there. But at least John tried to reach out and act like a human being. Kind of the same with George. But George would have a story to tell, and be very excited about it. And it would be a funny story, and you knew it was funny because he was laughing at it. A lot of times he's the only one laughing at it because a lot of times I didn't understand his stories. But again, he was another guy. I think he was kind of a little socially awkward, didn't know how to make small talk, and would just begin telling you a story about something that happened to him or something that happened in the past. And so, yeah, I've met both men. I don't really have an opinion about them as people. They seem amiable. They seem nice people. George always found it funny that he and I would be mistaken for one another because we both wore Hawaiian shirts to conventions. But beyond that, not a lot of whatever. Now they were definitely in a rivalry with one another. I don't know if it was a bitter rivalry because there was plenty of work to go around for both of them. They're certainly rewarded. They had their own franchises. They had their fan followings. But I don't think it was bitter. And why would it be? It's not like it's not like a zero-sum game. Where they're going to take Fantastic Four away from John Byrne and give it to George Perez or vice versa. But as far as the comparison of the two artists, I was never a big Perez fan. I apologize because I know George Perez fans are rabid. They love George Perez, and God bless you if you love George Perez. But I think largely you like George Perez because of his interpretations of your favorite characters, be they Marvel or DC. Because every time George tried to do something on his own, it always failed. And he put just as much work in it as before, but it failed. I think he was just, he was associated with those favorite characters and nobody really cared very much when he strayed away from them. They wanted to see him back at work. I remember talking about JLA Avengers for what seemed like a lifetime. That project was always aborting and rumors and everything else. And everybody just wanted to see him back on that. And they didn't want to see him doing anything else. It's kind of sad when you get right down to it. Byrne was different in that, he wrote as well as drew, writes as well as draws, I should say. I don't believe he's retired. I'm sure he's still doing something. But he was more of a force to be reckoned with and did have success outside of doing DC and Marvel characters. Obviously not as huge a success because he didn't have the backing of Marvel and DC, but he did have success doing other things at other companies, from, creator-owned to different franchises like Star Trek and things like that. So of the two, I've always enjoyed Byrne's work more. I have some problems with Byrne's writing, but they're not enough to stop me from reading it. And he certainly knows how to put together. He's a much better storyteller than George was. I found George's storytelling kind of static, but Byrne would fool around and do things. He was more of a craftsman in comics. He's more of an all-rounder than George Perez was. And I know I don't normally compare artists or critique my fellow freelancers and everything else, but I get asked about George Perez and John Byrne so often. I thought, I really need to, put my oar in here. I need to, satisfy your your morbid curiosity of what I think about these guys. But nice guys, big talents. I just prefer one over the other. So, and I don't have any details about the rivalry. I don't think they were selling this. I can't imagine George Perez hating anybody. But John, I can imagine getting somebody gets under his skin. I can imagine a poor reaction. But George just seemed to love everybody. So if it was a rivalry, it was not bitter. Okay, quad spin. Yeah. Eric McRae is back with, do you have a favorite MCU movie? Which is your favorite MCU movie? Well, I really liked the Blade movies when they came out. I want to see them. I think everybody forgets they were Marvel movies. But I dug them. I want to see all three of them at the movies. I think I want to see the second one twice. And I watched the first two recently. The third one kind of falls apart, but I watched the first two recently and enjoyed them even more. So they were cool. Iron Man is probably my favorite of the actual MCU superhero movies. The first Iron Man movie is a perfect representation of the Iron Man origin and has everything in an Iron Man story that you would want, be it a comic book or a movie. And it's just a hell of a story. I mean, the Marvel origins, let's hand it to them. The Spider-Man's origin, Iron Man's origin, those are great stories. They really are. And I think that's the success of the MCU, that they launched off of Spider-Man and Iron Man. They launched off their best origin stories. I don't know if that's by accident or design, but, this is where the magic started to happen before, in recent years, the magic started to go away. But Iron Man is my favorite of the MCU movies. Coming in close is the first Ant-Man movie. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a fun adventure, a fun superhero story. Not so great an origin story because it's not Hank Pym's origin. But I thought it was a lot of fun. And it took full advantage of the superhero genre. It's a full-on superhero movie, and much of it reminded me of the comics. Because I liked Ant-Man when I was a kid. I read a lot of Ant-Man. I was really upset when they turned into the Giant Man. Giant Man gets big. What's special about that? And like a lot of kids, I was fascinated with ants. So Ant-Man spoke to me. But I really enjoyed this movie. And I thought Paul Rudd did a good job. And then you had Michael Pena. And anything Michael Pena's in is better because Michael Pena's in it. So there you go. Quintuple spin. You are on a roll, my friend. A roll. You got a quintuple spin. First time at bat. Eric McRae is back with, What are your thoughts about the potential of grabbing a plethora of public domain superheroes, such as the Green Spider, Miss Fury, Black Terror, etc., creating a new superhero universe? Well, there's just buckets, barrels, crates full of golden age superheroes that are out there in the public domain. It's hard to fathom how many comic book companies there were. It's like everyone who had a printing press in the late 30s and 40s put out comics. Comic book companies you never heard of. Characters you never heard of. I'm still hearing about characters I never heard of before. And just hundreds and hundreds. And of course, they're all open to use and reinterpret and all the rest of it. And yeah, it might be fun to cobble together my own team. But I just don't have any interest in it. I'd like to get back to Airboy because I have a feel for Airboy, and I'd like to get back to my version of Airboy. Writing Black Terror with Bo Smith was fun, but do I want to go back to it? And also, I mean, how much more superhero stuff do I need in my life? I'm working pretty hard for Rippaverse and, building a new universe. And to go back and create a new continuity, a new reality for a team of characters that no one remembers, is a little late in the game for me. If I was a young stud just starting out, yeah, I'd be all over this. And people that are doing this and who are all over it, God bless them. Yeah, that's great. You can do great stuff with these characters. You can have a lot of fun with them. But I'll leave that game to younger men. Kieran Brunkard. In Batman lore, can Jim Gordon ever discover Batman's secret identity? Or is that something that's generally kept completely off limits? He should never know. And even if he knows, he shouldn't know, if you know what I mean. I hear all the arguments. He's such a great detective. Of course, he would figure it out. Yeah, but if he didn't want to figure it out, he wouldn't. And my biggest argument against Jim Gordon knowing that Batman is Bruce Wayne is, why would Batman be Bruce Wayne? Why would Batman be anybody? Why wouldn't Batman just be Batman all the time? Why wouldn't Batman be Batman as soon as the sun goes down and go back somewhere and sleep all day? And just be Batman again when he woke up? That would be my question, living in Gotham City. My assumption would be Batman is Batman 24/7. He's not this famous billionaire. It'd be like saying, the same thing for Superman, Clark Kent, except for the obvious physical resemblance. Why would you assume Superman's anybody? If you were Superman, why would you waste your time getting a job? Cashing a paycheck, having a lousy 1-bedroom apartment in Metropolis. You're Superman, for God's sake. So I think Jim Gordon wouldn't want to know. And as long as he wasn't curious, he could never find out. And Batman's pretty damn careful about his little secret. So there's no reason that Jim Gordon would discover it by accident. He's not changing in a telephone booth. Now, I've had this argument with other writers. I've had it with fans. And I once had it, and I've told this story before, I once had it in the DC offices where a relatively new writer to Batman proposed a story in which Jim finds out that Batman is Bruce. And the editors were all for it. They thought it sounded interesting. I had a room full of editors, Denny and Scott Peterson and Darren Vincenzo and Gorf, and we're all on a speakerphone. And I just happened to be there that day. And they're all going to do this. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Think about that. Whoa, wait, what are you guys talking about? We're going to sacrifice this decades long, this cornerstone of the Batman continuity. We're going to sacrifice it for one story? It's lazy. Come up with another story. And see, the writer, who was not very pleased with me, was on the other end of the speakerphone, wherever he was in the country or in the world. and getting pretty steamed as I ran down all the reasons that I just ran down to you why this won't work. Most important among of them was, I said, the people walking around out there, those people that don't care. I talked about those people that they don't know and they don't care. There's people out there walking around. They know like 10 things about Batman. Even if they've never read a Batman comic, they know like 10 things about Batman. And one of them is Commissioner Gordon does not know who Batman is, does not know Batman's secret identity. And I says, when you have something that indelible that the general public knows, you can't wash that away, because we're going to have to live with that horrible decision and continuity for the rest of our lives. And I said, that's why you can't do it. Because, Normie Norm and Normie Norma out there, they think Commissioner Gordon doesn't know who Batman is. And we got to leave it that way. And I convinced the editors, and they shot down the writer's story, and he had to go off and come up with something else, probably equally lame. So, boy, you really want to know that writer's name, don't you? It wasn't Doug or Alan. I tell you that, because they never would have done that. They never would have suggested a story that's stupid. So anyway, enough of that. Boy, I've ragged on my fellow, well, not ragged on, but I've commented on my fellow freelancers, which I normally don't do. But I'm not naming that last guy. Or girl. Could be anything these days. Okay. If you want to get a hold of me and beg me to tell you that writer's name, to no avail, you get a hold of me at brunobookstore@gmail.com, brunobookstore@gmail.com. That's the most reliable way to reach me. And I want to remind you that Ask Chuck Dixon's, many of these episodes are now available on Audible for free. Just click on your Audible, look for Chuck Dixon, maybe listen to a Levon Cade novel, and then listen to a few episodes of Ask Chuck Dixon. So I put you to sleep. Put you right to sleep. All right. Well, that's it for this week. Thanks you for listening and watching and liking and subscribing and commenting. And thank you all for the great questions. And I see a whole bunch more questions for next week already lined up. And I will see you all, hopefully, down the road.